Hello and welcome to the Meet the Expert from India event, the Trade Expert. This has been organized by Leicestershire Asian Business Association, LABA, and the Indo-British Trade Council. The Indo-British Trade Council is a part of LABA, but we are specifically catering towards the needs of the Indian markets, SMEs who want to work closely with India. Now, LABA and IBTC have been doing this for a long time. We want to create a competitive advantage in the East Midlands for SMEs here to go and capture overseas markets. We have seen in the last decade, I have been here in the last decade, but I've been going back to India and I've seen how the markets have opened up. It's a very, very different scenario from, if I compare the last 10 years. There's been a lot of disposable income. There's been a lot of attraction towards international products. And so I think this is the time to be in India. We are going to hear more about it from the First Secretary, who's based in the Mumbai Deputy High Commission. We at LABA would like to create that competitive advantage, and we are taking the next step in terms of going on multimedia platforms. We have a LinkedIn account, so if you have not linked up with us on LinkedIn, please do, because there's a lot of activity going on there. We are on Twitter, so there are a lot of tweets coming out from our chairman on the Twitter account. So it's a very exciting time. It's a good place to be. We have got a nice panel up here. Before I go to the panel, actually, we have got wishes sent from our Vice President of the Indo-British Trade Council, who's Nicky Morgan, the MP from Loughborough. We have got wishes from John Ashworth, who's the MP of South Leicester, and he has sent a small message, which I'll have to read because he can't be here. But to say that John Ashworth has got a fellowship by the Industry and Parliament Trust, which is a charity based at Westminster, to intern with LABA and IBTC to support SMEs to further enhance bilateral trade, inward investment, and academic links with India and Leicester. So he's going to be key again to looking at India. So this is from John Ashworth. He says, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Oadby and the Leicestershire Asian Business Association for organizing this important event on exporting to India. It is a great regret that due to my parliamentary responsibilities, I'm unable to attend. Leicestershire is a great county with a rich and diverse culture and strong diaspora links to India. As someone who is eager to promote the growth of SMEs in Leicester and Leicestershire, I'm keen to support activity which unlocks and utilizes the great potential the area has for trade with emerging economies like India. LABA's International Trade Hub is a vital component in the efforts to use our trade links to increase growth in the local economy. This event, which focuses on trade opportunities in financial services, professional services, infrastructure, environment, and water projects, marks a significant opportunity for leading business people, people in the banking sector, delegates from the British High Commission in Mumbai, and journalists to discuss how we can use our trade links with India to improve economic growth and the growth of small and medium-sized firms in Leicester and Leicestershire. I look forward to hearing the outcomes of this event and wish you all an enjoyable and productive evening. So that's from John Ashworth. So turning to the panel, we have got Mr. Priyesh Patel, who is our board member, and as you know, he's the director of CoFresh, one of the leading brands in Leicester. Then we have Mrs. Rani Mahal, who is the vice president of LABA, and may I say the councillor for, no? Candidate. But you're the councillor of Great Glen Parish Council. Yeah, so I'm right on one aspect. So she is the councillor for the Great Glen Parish Council. Then we have Mr. Kamlesh Purohit, who is a presenter on BBC Radio Leicester. But actually, Kamlesh has celebrated 25 years in radio and television with the BBC. He has worked at national, regional, and local levels. 5 Live, Radio 4, BBC One, East Midlands Today are all brands we know. He's worked with all of them. He's based now at the BBC's news headquarters in, to get it right, Broadcasting House in London, right? So that's the BBC headquarters. But you can still hear him on BBC Radio Leicester every Sunday. So he's still our local man. Yeah. Then we have the man of the hour, Mr. Ben Aldred, who is the first secretary at the Deputy High Commission in Mumbai. But I won't say anything more. I think he'll talk and he will tell us more about himself. Then it's me. I've got an empty seat there, so I'm a board member of LABA and I'm on the IBTC board. But in my day job, I'm an academic. I teach and research business management at Loughborough University. Then we have Mrs. Rosita Page, who is the councillor.
Vice Chairman of Leicestershire County Council, hopefully to be Chairman next year.
Excellent. That's very good news. So that's Rosita. And finally, we have Mr. Raja Mahal, who is a board member of LABA, and he has a business in property. There's only one reminder before I hand over. There are membership forms and a feedback form on the seat, which you may have looked at. Please try and give us feedback because it will help us to improve the events next whenever we do it. And if you want to follow us, please become members. If you are not already members, it will help us again. You know, it's a nice community. It's nice to be in touch to do these activities. So to hand over, then I'm going to hand over to Mr. Kamlesh Purohit, who's going to take us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see so many friends here. Many of you I know. Those of whom we've met for the first time, it'll be great to have a chat later on. Somebody introduced me as somebody who's been in the BBC for 25 years, and I know you'll find that hard to believe. But I was only about 5 when I started in the BBC. It's, of course, a big privilege for us to have Mr. Ben Aldred, First Secretary at the British High Commission in Mumbai, in Leicester. And I understand, Mr. Aldred, that this is not your first visit to the LABA offices. You have been here before, so clearly you like the hospitality of the people of Leicester. And tonight, of course, you'll give us your very special insight on developing opportunities with India. I know I was talking to you earlier, and you've been in Mumbai for a year, so you're a seasoned pro now, aren't you? Of course, investing in India has its own challenges, as we all very well know. I think the term in Hindi is chalak, crafty. Some of you who've sort of ventured in business in India will know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the beggar who was standing outside the Taj Palace talking to another beggar and saying, "I've just come out of the Taj, I've just had a grand meal." So the beggar said to him, "How on earth did you manage that, you know?" He said, "Well," he says, "when I was begging on the street, somebody gave me 100 rupees. So I went into the Taj, ordered a grand meal, had everything on the menu. When the bill came, it came to 5,000 rupees. So he said, "Yeah, so how did you manage that?" He said, "Well, I just told the manager, I can't pay." So the manager, the Taj manager, called the police. The police came and took me out. Of course, I slipped him the 100 rupees and he let me go. It's good financial management, isn't it? And investing in India is not just about beggars, you know, it's about other people you need to look out for as well, like the employer who was looking for a new recruit, and he said to the chap he was interviewing, he says, this job, in this job we need somebody who's responsible. So the applicant said, "Well, I am the one you want, you know." So he said, "Well, why is that?" He says, "Because in my last job, you know, every time something went wrong, people said, 'You are responsible.'" Anyway, I'm sure Ben will tell us about all the pitfalls and the advantages of investing in India in his presentation. And then after that, I'll pretend to be a radio presenter and I'll ask Ben some questions. I'm sure there'll be lots of areas that I won't cover, so we'll throw the floor open for you to ask questions. If there's anything specific that you want to ask, then the opportunity will be there. And also at the end, after the sort of the formal proceedings are over, I'm sure you'll be able to have a one-to-one chat with Ben if there's anything specific that you want to pick up on as well. So that's kind of the format for this evening. So let's not waste any more time. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Ben Aldred.
In my position as a civil servant, I'm not allowed to have as good jokes as that. I want to start by thanking LABA for inviting me back again this year. Some of you will remember I came last year, and last year was very useful. for me. It was really useful to understand the concerns and the needs of the business community here when trying to address the market in India. And as some of you will remember, I'm particularly fond of supporting the East Midlands business community because I'm from just down the road in Nottingham. Why are we putting so much effort into India at the moment? And when I say we, I mean the UK government. You will probably have seen reports from February of this year where the Prime Minister went to India. He had a visit to Mumbai, Delhi and Amritsar. And he took along with him the largest ever delegation of businesses on any Prime Ministerial visit at any time to anywhere in the world. Now, that's not a coincidence, because the UK government feels that the relationship between UK business and India business is one of the key planks that will drive forward UK economic growth over the years to come. And it's the same reason why, shortly after being voted into office, the Prime Minister made one of his first destinations India. It's the same reason why London Mayor Boris Johnson came to India last year. It's the same reason why this year we're expecting a minister, a UK government minister, to come to India on average once every month during this year. Now, yes, the UK government and the Indian government have political interests in common, but primarily our interest is in building up the business relationship. Now, the question that should be asked is, are we fooling ourselves in thinking that by putting all this effort in, we can get good business out of India? Well, we don't think so. The reason why is, whenever we address Indian businesses, whenever we address Indian politicians, we hear again and again the same sorts of things. We hear the respect shown for the British legal system, the British system of regulation, the British business culture. Many Indian business people feel that they can do business with us in the UK, and that they can do that in a way that they trust, in a way that will be mutually beneficial. And you can talk to people who are not business people throughout India and ask, what did the British do to India? And sometimes you might expect people to say terrible stories of the colonial period, and sometimes we hear that, but actually more often we hear, you left a very good education system, or you left us the English language, which has meant that we've been able to market India to whole wide areas of the world. There's a huge amount of respect for the UK and British business. Now, if there's that level of respect for the UK and British business generally, then how much more so will there be respect for business with the Indian diaspora? It's a word, I don't really like using the word diaspora, but the community of British people who have got Indian links. And we find that many companies are really comfortable in dealing with British people generally, especially with Brits of Indian origin. So we do think that the relationship is there. That means that there's potential. Now, that's fine. That's potential in the relationship. But is there potential actually in India to have a good business opportunity? Well, you may have, if you've been following the Indian press over the last year, you will hear tales of woe. Tales of woe of the fact that the economy is only growing by 5% in this last year. You know, so many countries in the world would be killing for 5% growth. And it's quite likely that growth will go back up again soon enough. So the potential of addressing a rapidly increasing market, and a market that's increasingly well-educated, multicultural, and very demanding. So we are well positioned to address that market, to give products that are of high quality for an increasingly demanding set of consumers. So what else is happening in India which gives us confidence that the business environment will improve? Well, you will have seen over the last year there have been moves to improve the regulatory environment in India. There have been passing of bills on, executive orders on multi-brand retail. The current Indian administration has invested quite a lot of political capital on single-brand retail. We're hopeful that the legislation will go through to allow greater foreign investment in the insurance sector over the next year. The government has shown that it really does want to improve the regulatory environment. Now, we have an election next year, but actually all the signs are that the main opposition bloc at the moment is also equally interested in improving the regulatory environment. So whatever the outcome of the election next year will be, and at the moment things are slightly on hold as people wait to see what will happen and see how the political decks will form after that election. We have a reasonably high degree of confidence that whoever forms the next election will continue a reform programme. It might not be in exactly the same direction, but will continue to take things forward. That's good news for us. That's good news because it means that the environment will steadily but slowly move to an environment that we're all much more familiar with. Clear, transparent regulation, and an environment that actually welcomes foreign businesses to engage with that market. We also are seeing a much greater understanding of the need to get the infrastructure right. Not just the physical infrastructure, but the infrastructure around business. Talking about physical infrastructure, you'll probably have seen in the current 5-year plan the objective to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure projects in the next 5 years. $1 trillion in the next 5 years. And much of that money will not come from the finance ministry, but the objective is for much of that money to come through private finance, PPP projects, bonds, and from the private sector financing institutions. Now, whether the Indian government can achieve $1 trillion of investment over 5 years or not remains to be seen. But what it does indicate very clearly is the level of ambition in the Indian government and the determination to deal with some of those issues. Anybody that's travelled any distances in India between businesses knows that those transportation and logistic problems are something that dearly need to be overcome. And we as the United Kingdom government, but also United Kingdom business, we don't just want to sit and wait and benefit from those improvements in infrastructure. We actively want to engage with that. And you may be aware that quite a number of UK companies in the field of master planning, architecture, project management are actively engaged in that infrastructure improvement story. And we're seeing investments by British companies across the infrastructure sector in energy, in water, in waste management, in construction of buildings, in construction of railway lines and railway stations. We are also looking at the possibility of deepening the engagement with India. If you saw the text of the communique after the summit of Prime Minister Cameron and Prime Minister Singh, one of the projects that was mentioned was the possibility of a Bangalore-Mumbai economic corridor. Now, the modalities of that, how that might work and how we might be able to cooperate with each other are being considered at the moment. But the key message is that the Indian government is talking to us about how we can have greater integration of our businesses and of our economies. If we're able to succeed in developing that relationship with Bangalore-Mumbai Economic Corridor, there will be multitudes of opportunities, both in transportation infrastructure, in social infrastructure, in the building of hospitals, in the provision of medical services, in the provision of education services, in all of those types of services that will come around new cities, new centres of wealth generation. What other areas are we looking for cooperation? Well, you will probably, those of you that have been visiting India over the last decade or so, will have noticed that you're seeing greater penetration of UK brands in the high street in the big cities. Greater penetration of the UK banks, particularly led by HSBC and Standard Chartered. If you travel to the Phoenix Mills shopping mall in Mumbai, it'll be amazing how many British shops that you will see there, British brands. And these are having real resonance with the newly affluent consumers there in Mumbai. The ambition of many of these companies is great. What's the role then of the British High Commission network and UKTI as part of this story? Well, we have been given a direct assignment from the Prime Minister to do all we can to support British business in engaging in this market. Obviously, part of that story is to attract investment from India into the UK, and we've had quite a lot of success with that recently, notably with Tata, who are taking care of some venerable British brands and not only looking after them but helping them thrive and grow. But also we're determined to try and help businesses, not just the big businesses but the small businesses as well, to engage with the market, to take advantage of the opportunities there to grow their business, and by growing the business, improve the links between our two countries. We have over 80 staff in UKTI in India, spread over multiple sites. All of the big cities are covered in India, and we're looking to establish offices in some of the tier 2 cities to make sure that we have that presence, the platform that you can grow off. That is a work in progress, and you'll probably be aware that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office has shifted resources from some of the countries in Europe to enable that growth of the network in India to take place. We also are working on a project with the UK-India Business Council to create a launch platform and an incubation service within India, and the pilot for that is going to start shortly. And that could be a very exciting opportunity and a way of helping companies like your companies get in touch with other British companies in the market, but also to get better access to Indian companies. The thing is about all of these resources that are being put onto India is they're only going to be any good to you if you use it. So please don't hesitate to contact us. The colleagues in LABA have good links with UKTI in the East Midlands. Please use the UKTI offices in the East Midlands. They're here for you. But you can also contact us directly. We'll be very happy to talk to you and to give you information about your market sectors, if necessary to give you bespoke programs and to help you get in touch with potential partners. Think about when there are missions that are coming out to India, think about whether it will be right for your business to come along. We find when there are missions coming out, the more companies we have and the more diverse those companies are, with big companies, medium-sized companies, small companies, the more effective it will be, because we have to look at it from the side of the Indian businesses and government authorities that they're meeting. They want to see a range of people and not just the same old people. So if you've never been on a mission to India, please try and find one that will work for your business. Certainly, increasingly, UK ministers are leading these missions, and they really appreciate it when businesses that have a real need to engage with the market come along, because it makes them have something that they can contribute. Because, as you can imagine, UK government ministers, one of their top priorities at the moment is to help build up the UK economy. And it makes them feel that they're doing something very worthwhile if they can say, see my colleague from this small business, he has the product for your government authority, or he has the product for your business. And you know, it's a good way to have your products and services advertised. Over the next few months, there will be multiple missions to India. There will be an energy mission coming to India shortly. Towards the end of May, there will be a mission focusing on the healthcare sector. At the beginning of June, there will be a mission focusing on the built environment sector and construction and infrastructure. Later on in the summer, there is likely to be a mission for financial and professional services, trying to reach out to some of the Tier 2 cities that have perhaps been neglected by other countries. Think about some of these opportunities. Talk to your ITAs and think about whether these are going to be right for you. And if not, make a suggestion of what will be right for you, because we are here to service your businesses. So if you have ideas of how we can serve you to address this market, we're here to listen, and we will do what we can to help you address that market. So our core message is the opportunity is there. We are building up the relationship. The growth is going to happen in India. There's plenty of work to go around. There's plenty of business to go around. And now is the time for UK businesses, the UK government to support UK businesses, to address the market, to build up our reputation and to establish and grow the businesses so that as growth picks up in India over the next few years, we'll be in an extremely good position to make a good profit in the market. But not just make a good profit, to support that India growth story, which is really important to all of our objectives. So thank you very much for listening to me. Certainly afterwards, I'd be happy to talk through any sorts of issues that you might have.
You said India, growing economy at a rate of 5%. We're seeing a new face of India in terms of development. But what's the economic mood there at the moment amongst businesses there?
Sometimes, when talking to Indian business people, you will sometimes get a little bit of a negative sentiment. And I'm sure for any of you that have dealt with Indian businesses, you may have picked that up. And that negative sentiment is what I would describe as comparative, in that for the last 10 years we've had such stellar growth that when growth comes down to 5%, it all feels terribly bleak. And so at this point in time, some companies are maybe a little bit negative, but they're not negative in terms of long-term prospects. They're sometimes a little bit negative about what's happening right now. And sometimes they will attribute that to, for example, difficulties in taking forward political agenda and this kind of thing. At the moment, a lot of things are waiting for the outcome of next year's election. But many people are very optimistic that once the election is out of the way, that things will start growing again and things will move forward again. And the reason why there's confidence about that is because it has to. The country cannot survive in the global marketplace without that growth. So a lot of people have faith in the practicality of the Indian people to find a solution to the things that are slightly holding back the economy at the moment. But that after next year's election takes place, it will grow again. But at the same time, a lot of Indian companies are looking outside of India for growth, not just within India. So they're looking at what opportunities there are in India, but also looking at what opportunities there are in Africa, in ASEAN countries. And this is one of the other things that we think is quite important, that as we engage with Indian companies, we're not just opening up the opportunities in India itself, but opening up the opportunities in other countries to work with those Indian companies, in other countries that they're targeting for growth. So although there might be some negativity at this point in time, we think the story in India is positive in the long run. But the story with engagement with Indian companies is immune to the ups and downs of the Indian economy because it's looking outward to many places around the world.
I mean, often it's about the timing, isn't it? About businesses being in the right place at the right time. What's the situation like? Because I can imagine other parts of Asia, America, other parts of Europe also eyeing the opportunities in the same way that the British companies will be. Are people getting in there? And in that context, how much competition do they provide for companies perhaps wanting to go from here into India?
Oh, there's a lot of competition. You're right to say that lots of countries want to get into India. So there is competition, but that's not a reason to sort of give up, because we do have some inherent advantages over some of the other countries in which we're competing against. Probably the biggest advantage is the common language that we have, and a long history of interactions between the two countries, and therefore much greater understanding, common understanding of what both countries can offer. So yes, there is competition, and in some sectors that competition is fierce, but that's no reason not to engage, because when competition is fierce, it means people are competing for something that's a reward that's worth having.
Sure. Just to pick up on that point, what is it about the DNA of Asian businesses here? You talk about the commonality in culture and the language, but is there anything else inherent in businesses here which they can exploit in setting up in India?
Well, what I wouldn't want to say is that that the opportunities are restricted to Asian businesses in the UK. Actually, I think serious Indian business people know to look beyond the colour of people's skin. They are looking for business people that they can work with, and the opportunities are not restricted to just members of the UK Asian business community. However, the fact that the UK has had a long history of Asian business people, and that has actually spread not just among the Asian business community but to the wider business community, means that there is much greater understanding. There is commonality. When we talk about commonality, we talk about things, for example, large amounts of the legal system is based upon the same basic roots. The legal system between the UK and India it has much greater similarity than the legal system between the UK and France, for example. And some of those fundamental business expectations are very similar. The sense that honour is very important, both within the Indian business community and within the British business community. And that's something that's highly respected. It's no secret that many of the top Indian business people, they have homes in the UK. They have children in the UK going to British schools. They have investments in the UK. They are putting their money where their mouth is in engaging with the UK. And that's something that we want to capitalise on if we can.
So a lot of similarities and sort of synergy, if you like, in the two sets of businesses. But one of the things I hear most from businesses, Asian businesses here who perhaps
Yeah.
want to set up there, is the different way of working.
Mm.
You know, perhaps we in Britain are used to a certain structured way of operating business,
Yeah.
and that isn't always the case in India. They're not just frustrations, but they can be big barriers to businesses there, can't they?
It's certainly different. And operating in India can be challenging. There's no denying that. There can be challenges from the slightly different way that the Indian business people will approach challenges. There's challenges with some of the bureaucracy and the red tape. There can even be challenges with difficulties in running a business within the law. But the challenges are the same for everybody, for every country. So what we find challenging in the UK, companies in France find challenging too, and in Germany and in Japan and China. Everybody finds it challenging, but the rewards are worth it if we can find ways to get beyond those challenges. And some companies do. They invest their time, they invest their effort into the market to make sure that they really understand the market, build up the relationships and build up those relationships of trust. And the companies that are willing to invest in the long run with their energy, they almost always succeed, as long as their business proposition is right for the market. But it does require effort and it requires time.
But for many businesses, it can also be a big gamble. It can be a make or break situation for their business.
Yes.
Clearly the rewards, as you say, are there if they can
Yes.
succeed. What support mechanism is there to help them in that journey? Or what can be put in place by organizations like LABA or the Asian business community per se in the UK?
Yeah. Well, there are a few things that can help reduce how much of a gamble it is. But any business venture is a gamble to a certain extent. The level of the gamble is dependent on the work that goes into it to make sure that you reduce the risks. For a start, the UK government network in India is there to try and help, to provide the support that businesses need. Now, we do our best in doing this, and where possible, we will do all we can to help businesses, to give advice, to help with contacts, to be a sounding board if things are difficult. That doesn't remove the element of risk. There are within India there are British business groups which provide a forum to help businesses to network with other British businesses and like-minded businesses to exchange ideas. And they're actually very supportive of each other. These are not forums where people are trying to sort of undermine their competitors' business, because there is a strong sense of camaraderie among the British business groups. The new programme that's being set up with the UK-India Business Council as well will provide another launch pad for businesses, which will hopefully, and the final details of the plan are being developed at the moment, but will provide a low barrier entry into the Indian market. So provide office space for British companies that wish to go, mentoring support for British businesses that wish to enter into the market. And at the big end of things, there are UK export finance credits that are available for British businesses that are hoping to address the Indian market. Again, it won't remove risk altogether, but it helps reduce the impact of the risk and make it a more attractive prospect to invest.
Okay. You've been there for a year.
Yes.
You've kind of, got a really good insight in way things are developing there. What would you say are the emerging areas of growth in India that local businesses here could exploit?
Well, as I mentioned before, when $1 trillion is going to be invested in infrastructure, there's going to be a lot of a lot of work coming out of that. And not just work coming from that direct investment, but all of the things that that infrastructure will support. So if a new city is being built, or a small city is being developed into a big city, then that requires social infrastructure as well. It requires retail distribution. It requires logistics. So there will be large opportunities there. More immediately, we're seeing great interest from the Indian government in the healthcare sector, with real demand for the sorts of solutions that the UK can offer on healthcare. Not just copying the NHS, but a lot of the ancillary services and the basic approach on healthcare. We're also seeing that there are going to be opportunities in the financial services sector. There are, as a sector, it has been quite stressed in India at the moment because lots of people have invested, and some of the banks are fully committed in their investments, for example, in the infrastructure sector. Because of that, the Indian government is now looking abroad to investors to support that sector. So there are opportunities there, not only in terms of getting returns on investment, but also in the infrastructure and the ecosystem around that. So, but we're seeing opportunities across the board. When you have a country that's growing, and as it is, there are always going to be opportunities in every sector.
Sure. You mentioned banking.
Yes.
I was talking to Oadby about this, and he said, there are sort of 11 banking institutions here in Leicester. Some of the Indian bankers, some of whom are here this evening as well, have great expertise in supporting SME businesses in the region. What can the government do to kind of distill this real valuable resource to help international sort of trade drive with India?
What, the valuable resource of Indian banking institutions?
Yes, and the expertise that's been developed in cities like Leicester.
Yes. Well, for one, we are actively supporting Indian banks that are hoping to come into the UK and hoping to expand their operations in the UK. Obviously, banking is the sort of sector where things don't happen very quickly. Because there's lots of regulation around banking, and the banking norms need to be adhered to. But we have partnerships with Indian banks to help them to address the market. We have partnerships to help put SMEs in touch with Indian banking institutions, but also with British banking institutions that have a very strong presence in India. For example, HSBC and Standard Chartered, who have quite significant presence in that market. But we do work with the Indian banks to try and help address the market.
Sure. Okay, I know people will be burning to ask questions. Just one more from me, and then we'll throw the floor open. Because Samir mentioned John Ashworth MP, who's the Leicester South MP, who's been awarded a parliamentary fellowship to be interned with LABA and IBTC to kind of study and further enhance SMEs in Leicester to trade with India. Is there merit in having trade programs like that, where, say, for example, for several weeks, civil service and diplomats and business leaders can exchange and kind of develop expertise and learn about the insights of each other's areas?
I think it's an interesting idea. It's certainly not something that I'm working on at the moment, but I'm sure colleagues in UKTI head office would be very interested in that as a concept, and I'll certainly convey that idea to them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Opportunity to ask questions. What I would just request is short, sharp questions, unlike mine, but also at the same time, I think try and avoid areas like visa issues. I know there's a big burning issue with visas and stuff like that. That's not Mr. Ashworth's Mr. Aldred's area, because his trade. So if you've got any sort of specific questions you want to ask, if you just raise your hand, we'll start taking questions. Who's going to be brave enough to start us off? or were my questions so brilliant that Mr. Pablo?
Mr. Aldred, may I call you Ben?
Yes,
Okay,
please do.
Ben, it was a pleasure chatting to you earlier. Just a question about the competition, which you said is fierce. I presume you meant on an international level, but whether it's $1 trillion worth of infrastructure or investment in health or universities, whatever, surely the competition from the Indian entrepreneurs and people already in those sectors is going to be equally, if not more, fierce. And as an outsider, how would you address that?
Yeah, we would expect most growth to be satisfied by Indian companies themselves, of course. You know, that would be completely natural. Where we expect UK companies to benefit from those growth prospects and to be important in the market is where there are specialist skills that are not readily available within market, and products that are not readily available within the market. We shouldn't do ourselves down in the UK. We have some incredible technologies. We have a real innovative approach to so many different sectors. And you know, we know from our discussions that we're having with Indian businesses that you would expect would be wanting to just be working on their own. They are keen to partner with British businesses. They're keen to partner with businesses from other countries too. But they're not being insular in saying, okay, we can sort this market out themselves. They understand that the experience that we have in the UK is very useful for their businesses and very useful for the economy. So there are opportunities there. You know, we're not expecting the UK to get $1 trillion of infrastructure contracts in India, but we do expect to get some.
From our end, when I find in the last 2-3 years, there is say for example the food sector, there's a big event happening in India in November every year in terms of the food sector, in terms of getting into the food markets. And for 2-3 years consistently, the UK pavilion or UK whatever stall has had not more than 1 or 2 people. Whereas the other countries have 30-40 people there, lots of companies there. And it's something at our end also that we are not trying the UK market. You know, we like it. We know there's a big market out there and we would like, but somehow there is a barrier. We do not take that step forward. Now, it may be the bad news about India, or it may be other things. So I don't know from your perspective, because you are trying to increase the trade of UK with India. How do we actually do that? Because we have tried very hard. Well, last 2 years, we were working with the Indian counterparts, trying to get, last year the UK was named as the most preferable country for that event, and there was only one person at the stall, which I think is not a good sign, even from the UK's trade perspective. So what do you think of that? What can we do about it?
I don't know about that specific event, but if I hear you describe an event where we've only managed to get one UK company to go to come and be along, that's not great. Yeah. And from a UKTI perspective, that's not great. But it's also on the side of the businesses as well. Yes. It's something that we have to address in partnership with each other. Certainly, if that's symptomatic of a failing by us, we would certainly want to address that and try and do better next time, and work with companies and work with the people who understand that market well to make sure we have a better offer the next year. Please feed back to us when you see those events. We don't mind being criticised, because our interest is not to say how great UKTI is. Our interest is getting business with British businesses, and that's what we want to do.
Could it actually be boiling down to the fact that there's not actually enough support to organisations, companies in England to actually go out there, exhibit, and actually work with bodies like yourself as well? Because you talked about all the services you can offer to companies in the UK. What is the cost of these services? There must be a cost to it, to organisations.
Yeah, there is a cost. And the cost depends on the type of service that's given. All of the charges that UKTI ever imposes, they're always subsidised. They never represent the full market cost. But that is government policy at this point in time, to charge for services that are provided.
I've looked at different countries around the globe and asked for reports, etc., to the UKTI and said, look, we need to look at, for example, India, Russia, and the figures that are coming across, you know, £4,500, £5,000 per report, and a bit of research doing here or there. It's a lot of money, when in actual fact all we're trying to do is literally tiptoe into that market and see whether it's feasible or not. And again, this comes back to the fact that we had an exhibition there in November and you had one exhibitor.
Yes.
I mean, that's quite shameful, because what we should be doing is actually trying to promote companies within the UK and saying, look, whether it's engineering, manufacturing, in food products, etc., we're going to give you grants, we're going to actually subsidise these companies and bring them to the forefront.
Yes. Certainly, if for companies coming out on missions, which would include exhibitions, I wouldn't expect costs to be as much as £4,500. But it will depend upon what services are provided. Those decisions on costs are made centrally, and it's made regardless of the country. This is not about India.
But I think that's something that needs addressing. I think, you know, back at the consulate, etc., that, you know, if we can get some subsidy or some sort of encouragement to entice companies to come to the forefront and get the reports and the studies required, and then actually engage with you for the services, then maybe there will be more companies actually trying to work with you.
That's useful feedback.
Yeah, I think it's not only the cost, it's the confidence. If a company doesn't want to go there and exhibit, I think there is a lack of confidence also. You know, either they're not being able to put the value proposition forward, or they don't think we don't have the kind of support required, as he said, to actually take it through. So it's that picture. As you said, it's a collaborative partnership. But it's how do we build that confidence for that business to take the first foot forward, even to ask for that. You know, I think that's very important. If they have not come to you, you wouldn't know what support to give. But it's that, how do you make yourself more accessible, perhaps? I don't know. I'm just putting it out. Anybody else?
Can I make a quick comment on your patient that I actually inquired from DTI a couple of years ago regarding, I said, just looking for 10 old wholesalers in France. So would you sort of, you know, you must have done research, etc., you know, can we have it? And it was £1,000. And that put me off. I said, I'll look at the yellow pages and do that myself. It's just sort of, I think the first step people take, and if it's going to cost them that sort of, just for the little advice, you know, it does people, you know, we're all worse off for that.
Anybody?
Apologise for coming up with a second question. So Ben, going back to your comment about the Prime Minister, 2 visits to India, trade delegation, record numbers of businessmen in tow. I don't know what happened to UK-India trade after the second one, but I certainly recall reading in the media that after the first visit, shortly after the last election, that the UK's position in the league table of countries trading with India slipped from whatever it was, 4th or 5th, down rather than went up. Now, given that you've now had a year in Mumbai, and I hope that you've been fortunate to travel beyond Mumbai, can you give us any insight into as to why you think that might be the case?
Well, you're quoting a figure of comparative position in a league table. After the visit, shortly after the last election, the Prime Minister set a target for the doubling of trade between the UK and India over the course of the current administration. Now, we're on target to achieve that. Now, does that mean that everything is wonderful? Well, it means we're doing okay, we're making progress, but we're not thinking that oh, okay, the job's done with doubling trade, because actually at the start of that process, trade was relatively low between the UK and India. It's a start. Other countries too are making an effort. We're less interested in where we are in the league table and more in just the straight number of how much trade that we have, because that's where value is coming from for UK companies. So we've made progress on it. Once we achieve that target of doubling the trade, I'm sure we will be set another stretching target. That won't be the end of the story.
Thank you for that. And just one final comment, going back to Paresh's point about the supposed or seeming lack of support centrally. Given that the Prime Minister's stated ambition is to achieve these targets, surely the support by means of subsidies for market research or whatever, perhaps it could be greater.
That may well be the case. What I would say is although you may feel that the prices are high, they are actually subsidised at the current rates. You may want to argue for higher subsidy, but it's not the case that there is no subsidy there. That's something that you might want to address through your MP.
If there's no questions, I mean, by all means, if there's any thoughts or perhaps you want to interject on some of the things that have been said earlier, would love to hear your thoughts as well. Anyone? Yeah, sure.
Just wanted to know what the outcome of the last delegation was, if there's any, or is it too early to say?
Of the last Prime Ministerial delegation? It's a little bit early to say. We have anecdotal evidence that during that visit that links were made between companies that were in the Prime Minister's delegation and businesses that they met. We haven't yet seen any of those come through to a conclusion because it really is still too early to say. What has improved is our profile, the UK profile in India. We got significant amounts of coverage for the Prime Minister's visit and the messages that he had about supporting business. And we were quite satisfied, and I know the Prime Minister was very satisfied with the fact that the previous week President Hollande from France went and didn't get anywhere near the amount of coverage that the Prime Minister was able to achieve. And so we take quite a lot of heart from that. We don't think that's not the objective in itself. But we do know that the feedback that we've had from companies is that they were able to advance the deals that they had and were able to create new networks from that visit. But we'll have to see in the long run what comes out of it.
How much of Britain's sort of historical past counts against these delegations? I mean, I know there was a lot of controversy around the fact of whether there should have been an apology by the Prime Minister, formal apology of what happened at Jallianwala Bagh, for example. Does the visibility of a lot of Asian businesses on that trade delegation offset some of the negativity of this, or does that kind of really, from your point of view, scupper a lot of the initiatives that you're making out there?
I think it's neutral, actually. And that's just my personal opinion. You've referred to some of the controversy around the visit to Amritsar, but most commentators in India, they saw what the Prime Minister did and the efforts that the Prime Minister made at that time and took it at face value. And there was not as much criticism within India as perhaps it seemed from reading the newspapers. Many people really appreciated the gesture of going up to Amritsar. And it's not just about the visit to the temple, but engaging with the business community there in Amritsar too. It was clear the Prime Minister did want to make sure that there was a significant British Asian contingent within his delegation. But that's natural because the British Asian business community is very important in the UK, and it would be very strange if it did not. And the Prime Minister took with him quite a few British Asian parliamentarians as well to underline those links. We certainly didn't get the sense of anything negative coming out of that. It just helped increase the engagement.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I'm from Loughborough, and now Thank you, Mr. Aldred, for such a nice talk you gave. But now talking to SMEs, companies, small and medium-sized companies, I mean, I pity to see that they don't have a confidence to go abroad. I mean, with East India Company, we've done business for a long while, and we know of the culture and everything. But getting the local SMEs, they think only the big companies can afford to go and do that because they've got facilities and all that. But it's pity to see a small company ready to fold, close the business and say, oh, the market dried up. When there's a market abroad there, they can sell it. Is there anything we can do to get the confidence of those SMEs to venture further, or some sort of facilities they can tap into? We can sort of do to give them a confidence to go abroad.
Yeah, well, certainly the current strategy of the UK government is very focused on supporting SMEs, and in the Prime Minister's delegation, I think it was approximately half of the companies that were on that delegation were SMEs. It was not just taking the CEOs of FTSE 100 companies, but there were SMEs ranging from one company had 3 employees and were on the Prime Minister's delegation, ranging up to some companies with a few hundred employees. The platform that I described that's being developed with the UK-India Business Council, that's very specifically designed to address the need of SMEs, to give them a low-cost, low-barrier entry into the Indian market. And once we have a little bit more clarity on how that's going to be structured, which will probably be in the next couple of months, we're going to make sure that everybody knows about it, because we want to get some excitement among the SME community, so that they're not just waiting for this to come, but eager to use the platform as soon as it's available.
Any other thoughts? Yeah, Arthur over there.
I represent the University of Leicester, so we're in the business of higher education. It was very encouraging to hear the insights you provided. I read copious notes. But from our point of view, we're actually finding barriers putting up in terms of recruiting Indian students, and that's particularly because of the withdrawal of the UK post-study work visa scheme. It's an enormous investment for students to come here and study here, and they need that payback by being able to work once they graduate here. And unfortunately, because of that withdrawal of that scheme, Canada, America, and Australia are seeming much more attractive options. What can be done about that?
Well, that's a question that I can't really answer to you, because essentially at the root of it is a political decision. It was a political decision to manage the immigration system in a different way to the way in which it had been managed under the previous administration, and essentially that's it. What we have been doing is to try and to overcome some of the myths about that immigration system, because there are some people who say, oh yeah, UK is now closed to Indian students. We have still substantial numbers of Indian students coming to the UK. It may not be quite as many as before, but part of the problem that we see is actually within India itself. Word has got around that the UK is not friendly for Indian students, and we're spending quite a lot of effort, and the High Commissioner is spending a lot of effort to say what the situation really is. He's not saying, yes, you can come and you can work for lots of years afterwards, because that's not reality. But he is spending a lot of time to explain that there are post-study work routes for those who are able to secure graduate level jobs. He is emphasizing that there is no upper cap on student visas, and that message is now getting through. It may be that the word has got around that it's easier in the US, but we're spending quite a lot of time, and the British Council is spending quite a lot of time emphasizing that UK educational institutions, just of themselves, never mind any post-study work routes, offer really good value for money, world-class education, actually in themselves reasonable charges compared to many of our competitor countries.
But you're an immigration lawyer, aren't you?
I'm not guilty. What I would like to say, you mentioned commonality, history, culture, language. But I would say that if you could get the message across to the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, by whatever means, that I think this government, and indeed the previous government, are in danger of wasting that legacy by raising the barriers to immigration. And when I say immigration, I mean in terms of like, people have spent, they do spend, as they will say, they'll spend a lot of money on education in the UK, then they're being told, that's it, you've got to go. So if you could get the message across that there's a legacy there, and it should be, and I think it really boils down to the Commonwealth versus the EU, and really the future lies with what's in the East. And if that message gets back to the higher-ups, I think that'd be a good thing.
It's certainly a message that ministers are aware of, and they are told frequently. But as I said, it is essentially a political issue that has to be addressed through your elected representatives.
He's got a busy day tomorrow. Any thoughts? Anybody else? Any questions or any thoughts? Closing comments? Risham?
Thank you very much for coming here and explaining the situation in India. I think the people sitting here, culturally they understand what is going on in India. They are very keen to invest in India, but only the thing what scares them off is the bureaucratic system and some of the difficulty they have to go through to establish their businesses. But at the end of the day, what my concern is, there are a number of experts from India and also people like civil servants like you, very keen to attracting the businesses in India. We start the dialogue, we do organize some seminars, we do have exchange visits, but very, very few people can have this follow-up structure behind it. And we come here tonight, we have discussed all the good things and bad things about investing in India or bringing Indian business people here. And under this roof, you got politicians, you got academics, you got business people, and the perception about Asians, what we have got donkey years ago about corner shops, they are not anymore corner shops, they are big business people. And I think what we have to be doing some sort of structure in place where we can follow up the discussion and dialogue that we can carry on. Then I think there could be some positive results at the end of the day.
I'm Dilip from Jack Masters Limited. You gentlemen asked if somebody have something in India. I don't know anybody else, but we are in knitwear manufacturing here for 25 years. 4 years ago, I make a plunge to go to India. And it's hard, slow, but you have to be patient, you have to invest money reasonable, and you would have a lot of influence. You got to know people. I haven't taken help from nobody, no Gujarat government, nor the British government, done on my own. Because I'm from India, I have background, and it's 4 years. But one thing I found, I supplying all the brands in India now. Knitwear, yeah. So they like British management, were thinking toward the quality and reliability. So there is a chance, but it's a big plunge. You have to have patience, time, money. But there is a big opportunity for small company. We are very small, but there is there.
I think that's a wonderful, positive note to end on. Thank you very much for that. If I can, well, yes, thank you, Mr. Aldred. Of course, I suppose businesses need the support of their local councils and the local politicians, and somebody who I've been told has been a fantastic supporter of small sort of ethnic businesses in Leicester and also of LABA is the Vice Chair of Leicestershire County Council. So ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Rosita Page.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, thank you to Ben. I think that's brilliant. And the term top-down and bottoms-up just sprung to mind. Ben's philosophy was the top-down, and mine is the bottom-up. And at the basis of all of big business are small business and local councils. And whilst I can't match an ambitious $1 trillion investment, but we at Leicestershire County Council are working with our partners. We're working with LABA. We support the National Asian Business Association. We work with the Chamber. It is all about working with partners, educating and putting the actual fundamentals in place. Because if the fundamentals are not there, then the stepping stone to bigger things isn't there. And the Leicestershire County Council, of which I am a member, will put economic development first. And we will do everything that is possible to promote economic growth within Leicestershire. At this moment, we are planning and we have committed 174 million of our spending into SMEs, so, you know, all together. Now, and I know as proud citizens, and I have to look at my notes now, as proud citizens, the Asian Business Association wants to play a very, very active role in the process. And I can't remember now. Hold that. My glasses, thank you. By promoting bilateral trade and inward investment, and to enhance the further standing of the business community and the SMEs of the United Kingdom in the world. And they have got considerable networks and influence, and with that we can work and we can do absolutely amazing things. And it's not just for their own, but it is for the wider SME communities in the region. And we feel that this has to be applauded and supported. And I think together we can work and achieve great things. And I thank the Leicester Asian Business Association for that. And I hope to look forward to a very successful future. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rosita. And I know LABA and Oadby sort of made a point of saying just how supportive you've been of the Leicestershire Asian Business Association, and it's deeply appreciated. So thank you so much. Fantastic. So thank you so much for that. Just some closing comments from what I've gauged off this evening. First of all, Mr. Aldred, very grateful for the insight and you know, some of the sort of very specialist knowledge that you have and you've been able to impart this evening. It's also good to know that there are infrastructures in place and support mechanisms in place for businesses who want to perhaps think of starting out in India. But I think it's quite clear also, listening to some of the comments and concerns from members here, that perhaps thought needs to be given in terms of the kind of support that you can provide for businesses here. It's a big venture for many people to kind of think about moving out to markets like India. It is a gamble, one which, as you said earlier on, can pay off, you know, with a bit of perseverance and persistence, as we've heard. But it is a big step, and I think any support or any kind of help that's available, both financial, I think, as well as expertise, would be deeply appreciated. I think that's something perhaps can be one of the action points to follow up of this particular evening. I think Risha made a very good point that it's really good to have sessions like this, but unless we follow things up and kind of work things through, then perhaps we haven't quite seen the whole journey. So I think that is a fair reflection of what certainly I've picked up this evening. But once again, very appreciative for you to join us this evening. Great to have you in Leicester again, and thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you. And so there just remains the final vote of thanks. So can I ask the Vice President of LABA, Leicestershire Asian Business Association, Mrs. Rani Mahal, to do that for us. Thank you.
Testing. I just wanted to say, actually, I did myself make a visit to India, a 10-day visit. It wasn't mainly actually to go and see my family, but I thought I'll put my business head on as well. And I did actually talk to some of the local relatives that were there. And one thing that they did mention was that the water turns off, or the electricity turns off for a certain number of hours in a day, and how they found that quite frustrating for them, to deal with local issues just on a sort of farming level. But that's some of the issues that people, face locally, and again, in India, that is something we have to be mindful of as well. I mean, I don't know which parts, delegations are going to, but rural part is what I'm talking about. So on behalf of LABA President Jaspal Singh Minhas, our joint chairman for LABA and IBTC Uday Dalakia and the board, I'd like to propose a formal vote of thanks. Firstly, to our guest speaker, Ben Aldred, thank you very much. This is Ben's second visit. Thank you for having LABA on your itinerary. In Leicestershire, we have a clear commitment to supporting bilateral trade and investment with India. You have a base in Leicester, and you are welcome any time. Thank you also to Rosita CC, Vice Chair and Chairman-to-be, for all your continued support to LABA. Thank you to Rafiq Patel, Board Member of IBTC, for his sterling support. Priyesh Patel, for my fellow Vice President of LABA, and to Co-Fresh Snack Foods for the generous sponsorship for this evening's event. Hopefully you've all enjoyed that. Dr. Samir Dani, for his leadership and hard work he puts in as a member of the LABA and IBTC. A special thank you to Kamlesh Purohit, who is a great help to LABA. He's helping us to reach out to thousands of businesses and who cannot be here tonight with us by recording and broadcasting this evening's meeting. The board of LABA is most grateful to you. Thank you, Prakash Catering, LABA Lata Datani and team. My sincere thanks to you all for coming. Please support us by becoming LABA members. We are all volunteers, and your support makes events like tonight happen month after month. Good night and have a safe journey.